I thought it was just another normal visit to my friend's house, until his mother looked at me like she already knew the secret I had never said out loud. And in that moment, I realized some truths don't get exposed, they get quietly understood. It starts like any other ordinary evening, the kind you don't remember until much later, when you start realizing that something important quietly begins. Her presence doesn't demand space. It simply occupies it naturally, like she belongs to every corner of the room without effort. She turns slightly when she hears me, and her eyes meet mine. For a moment, I forget what I was about to say. There's a softness in her expression, but not the kind that comes from hesitation. More like emotional control, carefully maintained over years. She smiles politely, the kind of smile adults use when greeting someone familiar but not close. And yet, something about the way she holds eye contact feels attentive. Like she's not just seeing me, but noticing me. "Come in," she says gently, her voice steady and warm, carrying a quiet authority that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. I nod quickly, slightly distracted, brushing it off as nothing. Just a greeting, just a normal moment. But as I walk past her, I catch a faint trace of something subtle. Maybe her perfume, maybe just the warmth of the kitchen air she stepped out from. It lingers longer than expected, like it attaches itself quietly to memory without asking permission. My friend calls from the other room, breaking the moment. I move forward, telling myself it's nothing. Just another evening, just another visit. But I notice something I can't easily ignore. She doesn't immediately leave the doorway. Instead, she watches for a second longer than necessary, not in a way that feels intrusive, but in a way that feels observant, like she is registering details others would miss. The way I stand, the way I respond, the brief hesitation in my movements. Then she turns away, disappearing into the kitchen as if nothing unusual happened at all. That should have been the end of it. But even as I sit with my friend, talking about random things, exams, jokes, irrelevant updates, my mind keeps drifting back to that brief moment. The way she looked at me, the calm precision in her attention, the strange feeling that I wasn't just being seen, but quietly evaluated in a way I couldn't understand. I shake it off eventually, convincing myself it's just overthinking. Still, when I leave that night, something feels slightly different. Not in a dramatic way, not something I can explain. Just a small, unspoken awareness, like a page in my life was turned without me noticing the hand that turned it. After that first evening, I don't think much of it. Life continues the same way it always does. Classes, messages, casual visits to my friend's house. If anything, I convince myself that the moment with his mother was meaningless. A coincidence. A tired mind reading too deeply into normal behavior. But small things don't stay small for long when they start repeating. The next time I visit, she is again there in the background before I even properly enter. Not waiting for me, not obviously positioned for attention, just present in a way that feels timely. As if she naturally exists in the same space my arrival happens to interrupt. She greets me again with that same calm voice. Same soft smile, same composed posture, but now I notice details I missed before. The way she slightly tilts her head when she listens. The way she pauses half a second before responding, like she's processing more than just words. The way her eyes move briefly, not restless, but precise, like she's mapping people silently. She asks casually one afternoon when I'm sitting with my friend. I nod. Nothing unusual. But when she brings it, she doesn't just place it down and leave immediately. There's a brief moment where our hands almost touch. Not fully, not intentionally, just the kind of accidental proximity that normally gets ignored. Except this time, it doesn't feel accidental. Her fingers brush the edge of the cup as she sets it down, and I notice how she steadies it carefully, making sure it doesn't tilt. Her attention is focused for a second longer than necessary. And for some reason, I become hyper-aware of everything. The silence in the room, the faint ticking of a wall clock, even my own breathing. She straightens up slowly, and before walking away, she looks at me again. Just a glance. Nothing more, but it lingers. Later that week, I help my friend move some books in the living room. It's casual, simple work, nothing worth remembering. His mother passes by, and I instinctively step aside to make space. As she walks past me, something shifts again, subtle, almost invisible. Her shoulder brushes lightly against mine. It's brief, barely a second, something that could easily be dismissed as proximity in a small space. But she pauses right after passing, not fully turning back, just slowing for a fraction of a second, like she felt it too. Then she continues walking. I stand there longer than I should, try to convince myself I imagine the pause, trying to reduce it to coincidence. But my mind doesn't fully accept that explanation anymore. Because it's not just one moment now. It's a pattern. A look that lasts slightly too long. A gesture that feels slightly too deliberate. A silence that arrives exactly when words might have changed the atmosphere. And the strangest part is not the behavior itself. It's how controlled everything feels, as if nothing is accidental, yet nothing is openly intentional either. By the time I leave that day, I don't feel confused exactly. I feel aware. Aware that something is slowly forming between us. Not spoken, not defined, but present in the smallest details. And for the first time, I start wondering a question I didn't want to ask. If none of this is accidental, then what exactly is it becoming? It happens on a quiet evening when nothing feels particularly special about the day. I stay behind at my friend's house longer than usual, partly because of random conversation, partly because I don't feel like rushing back into the noise of the outside world. My friend steps out for a moment, leaving me alone in the living room. And for the first time, there's a strange kind of silence between me and his mother that doesn't feel empty. It feels aware. She is in the kitchen, moving slowly, naturally, like she's used to the rhythm of a house that never really becomes fully quiet. I think I should focus on my phone or look away, but instead I find myself noticing her presence more than I intend to. A few seconds later, she walks in with a glass of water and sets it down on the table near me. "Long day?" she asks casually. Her tone is light, but not distant. It feels like a question that doesn't need an answer, unless you want it to. I shrug slightly. Normal, I guess. She doesn't leave right away. Instead, she sits down across from me. Not too close, not too far. Just at a distance where conversation becomes unavoidable, but still comfortable. That alone feels different. She folds her hands gently in her lap, her posture relaxed but composed. There's a quiet confidence in the way she sits, like she doesn't need to fill silence with unnecessary words. "So," she says after a short pause, "what are you planning for the future?" It's a simple question, one I've heard many times. But the way she asks it feels different, not like curiosity, but like she genuinely wants to understand. I hesitate at first, then I start talking. At some point, I stop filtering my words. I talk about pressure, not the dramatic kind people mention casually, but the quiet weight of expectations that never really go away. I talk about feeling stuck between what I'm supposed to do and what I actually want. I talk more than I usually do with anyone. And she listens, not interrupting, not reacting too quickly, just listening in a way that makes me feel like I don't need to explain myself twice. At one point, I glance up and notice her expression hasn't changed much. Still calm, still composed. But her eyes are different now. More focused, more present. When I finally finish, there's a small silence in the room again. Not awkward, just full. Then she leans back slightly and says something that stays with me longer than expected. "People who look calm on the outside," she says gently, "are often the ones carrying the most noise inside." I don't respond immediately, because something about the way she says it doesn't feel like advice. It feels like recognition, like she didn't just hear what I said, she understood what I didn't say. For a moment, I look at her differently. Not as my friend's mother, not as an adult casually making conversation, but as someone who just saw a part of me I didn't know was visible. And in that quiet living room, with nothing happening except two people sitting across from each other, something subtle shifts. Not romance, not confession, just the beginning of being understood too clearly by someone I didn't expect to understand me at all. After that conversation, I start noticing something I didn't notice before, or maybe it was always there, and I was just too unaware to recognize it. The atmosphere in the house feels slightly different when she is around. Not louder, not more intense, just more present. It happens one afternoon when I'm sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, half listening to the sound of movement in the kitchen. My friend is somewhere upstairs, so it's just me and the quiet rhythm of the house again. She walks into the living room holding a small stack of folded clothes. She pauses for a second when she sees me, like she's adjusting her direction slightly, then moves closer. "Can you help me for a second?" she asks softly. I nod immediately and stand up. It's something simple, just organizing a few things, nothing important. We stand close for a moment near a shelf, sorting through items in quiet coordination. There's no urgency, no pressure, just shared space and small movements. At one point, a folded shirt slips slightly from her hand. Without thinking, I reach forward to steady it. Our hands meet, not fully grabbing, not holding, just a brief contact, my fingers brushing hers as we both stabilize the fabric. But time feels different for a second. Neither of us pulls away immediately. It's not dramatic. It's not obvious. But it lingers, that fraction of a pause where both people become aware of something unspoken passing between them. Her eyes flick up to mine briefly, and in that moment, I notice something I hadn't seen before. A softness that wasn't visible in conversation. A quiet awareness that sits just behind her calm expression. Then she gently adjusts the shirt in her hands and steps back, breaking the moment first. "Sorry," she says lightly, almost casually, as if nothing happened. But her tone is slightly different, more controlled than before. I nod, trying to act normal, but my mind is already replaying the second the contact happened. Not in a confusing way, but in a way that makes me overly aware of my own presence in the room. She turns slightly to place the clothes aside, but I notice she doesn't immediately continue speaking or leave. There's a small pause in her movement, not long enough for anyone else to notice, but long enough for me to feel it, like something briefly interrupted her internal rhythm. Then she resumes her usual composure, but the air between us doesn't fully reset. Later, when I sit back down, I catch myself thinking about how ordinary everything should have been. A simple help, a simple touch, a simple moment. Nothing worth remembering, and yet it stays. Not because it was significant on its own, but because of how aware we both were during it. It wasn't attraction in a visible sense. It wasn't anything spoken or defined. It was something quieter, something in the timing of movements, in the hesitation before stepping away, in the way silence felt slightly heavier for a few seconds after. That night, as I leave the house, I realize something I don't fully admit to myself yet. It's not just that I notice her more now. It's that I feel like she notices me differently too. And once that thought enters my mind, it refuses to leave the same way. It starts with rain. Not heavy at first, just a soft, steady drizzle that turns the streets into a blurred reflection of lights and movement. I arrive at my friend's house expecting a short visit, nothing more. But when I get there, I find out he stepped out with relatives, and the timing feels slightly inconvenient. I consider leaving, but his mother stops me at the door before I can fully decide. "It's raining," she says simply, as if that alone explains everything. "Wait a little. It'll slow down." Her tone is calm, not insistent. But there's something in the way she says it that makes refusing feel unnecessary. So I stay. The house feels different when it's quiet like this. Without my friend around, the usual casual noise is gone. The rooms feel more defined, the silence more noticeable. She brings me a towel without asking if I need one. I take it. Our fingers don't touch this time, but the awareness is still there, subtle, familiar now, like something neither of us comments on, but both of us register. Tea, she asks after a moment. I nod. A few minutes later, she returns and sits across from me again. Not rushing, not standing, not hovering. Just sitting like she has decided there's no need to fill space with movement. Outside, rain taps softly against the windows. Inside, the silence stretches longer than usual. She looks at me for a moment, not in a casual way this time, but with a stillness that feels slightly more focused than before. Then she says something unexpected. You don't talk about everything, she says gently, even when you talk a lot. I blink slightly, caught off guard by the accuracy of it. It's not a question. It's an observation. I shift in my seat, unsure how to respond, but she doesn't wait for me to find words. She continues, voice steady, almost thoughtful. Some people think silence means nothing is there, she says, but usually it just means it hasn't been spoken yet. There's a pause after that. Not awkward, just full. I look at her more carefully now. She isn't studying me the way she used to in earlier meetings. This feels different, less like curiosity, more like recognition. Then she says something quieter. I think I already understand the part you never say out loud. That line lands differently. Not dramatic, not heavy in a visible way, but it settles in my chest like something that was always there but never named. For a moment, I forget what to say entirely. Because she's right, not fully, not perfectly, but close enough that it feels unsettling. I don't know how she knows, or how she pieced it together from small conversations, small silences, small observations I never thought mattered. The rain outside gets slightly louder, but inside the room, everything feels still. She doesn't push further. She doesn't ask me to confirm anything. She simply sits there, as if she has said what needed to be said and is now allowing space for it to exist. And in that quiet, I realize something I didn't expect. It isn't that she's guessing my secret. It's that she has already understood the shape of it and is waiting for me to be ready to admit it to myself. After that rainy evening, something shifts in the way I experience her presence. Not in a dramatic or obvious way. Nothing changes on the surface. The house is still the same, the routine still the same. My friend still jokes around, still pulls me into random conversations, still treats everything like it has always been. But I notice her differently now, and I think she notices that I notice. It happens again on another quiet evening. I'm sitting in the living room, pretending to focus on something on my phone, but my attention keeps drifting toward the soft sounds coming from the kitchen. The simple, familiar rhythm of someone preparing tea, moving cups, turning on and off the stove. Then she appears in the doorway, not rushing, not announcing herself, just arriving like she belongs to the silence. She folds her hands in her lap again, but this time her posture is slightly less formal, more relaxed, more human. You carry things quietly, she says after a pause, like you think no one would understand them if you said them out loud. Ich glänze her. She isn't looking at me in a judging way. There's no pressure in her expression, just calm observation and something softer underneath it. I don't respond immediately. I'm not trying to figure you out, she says softly after a moment. I just notice things. There's something in her tone that makes the sentence feel important, even though it sounds simple. I finally speak, my voice quieter than I expected. Most people don't. She nods slightly, like she agrees without needing explanation. And then something happens that doesn't feel like a turning point, but still changes everything internally. She leans back slightly, exhaling gently, and says, sometimes people don't need advice. They just need someone who doesn't look away when they're being honest. Her words settle between us without urgency. No tensión brax. And somehow, that feels more dangerous and more comforting than anything I expected to find in a house I used to think I understood completely. After that series of quiet moments, things don't suddenly change, not in the way stories usually expect them to. There is no confession, no confrontation, no dramatic ending that forces everything into place. Instead, life simply continues, but with a different weight behind it. I notice it first in the absence of certain things. The pauses are shorter now. The glances don't linger as long. The small, unplanned moments that once felt natural between us begin to disappear one by one. Not abruptly, but carefully, like someone is gently removing threads from something delicate, so it doesn't tear all at once. When I visit again, everything feels normal on the surface. My friend is there, talking loudly about something unimportant. The house smells the same. The usual routines are still in place. But I feel it immediately. Her presence is different. Not colder, just slightly more distant. She still greets me the same way. Still offers tea. Still speaks with that calm, steady voice that never raises itself unnecessarily. But there's a subtle shift in how she holds herself around me now. A return to boundaries that were once softened, now quietly restored. And I don't know if it's intentional or necessary. One afternoon, I find myself alone near the entrance, getting ready to leave earlier than usual. My friend is distracted upstairs, so the house is unusually quiet again. She appears near the hallway. She stops for a second when she sees me, like she wasn't expecting the timing, then adjusts her posture slightly. Composed, calm, familiar again. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The silence between us isn't empty. It's full of everything that was never said. She walks closer, not too fast, not hesitant either. Just steady. "You're leaving early?" she asks softly. "Yeah," I reply. "I have something to take care of." She nods once slowly. No follow-up questions. No attempt to extend the conversation. Then she stands there for a moment longer than necessary. Not enough to feel dramatic, but enough to feel intentional in its stillness. Her eyes meet mine briefly, and I realize something in that glance. Not regret, not longing, just awareness. Like she understands exactly what existed between us, and also understands why it cannot be allowed to continue growing in the same way. She takes a small step closer, then stops at a respectful distance. For a second, I think she might say something more. But instead, she simply lifts her hand slightly and gently places it on my arm. Light, controlled, brief. A touch that lasts only a moment, but somehow carries everything that was never spoken. "Take care of yourself," she says softly. "You don't always need to understand everything right away." Her hand withdraws. No hesitation. No extra movement, just release. I nod, but I don't find the right words, because anything I could say feels either too much or not enough. She steps back, returning to her usual composure almost immediately, as if she has placed everything back where it belongs. And I realize then that this is not an ending in the dramatic sense. It is a quiet correction, a return to boundaries that were briefly softened by understanding, now gently restored by reality. When I finally leave the house, I don't look back immediately, but I feel something inside me settle in a way that is both calm and unresolved. Because nothing was ever claimed, nothing was ever defined, and yet everything between us changed in ways that cannot be reversed, only carried forward quietly, like a memory that refuses to lose its emotional weight. And as I walk away, I understand something I wasn't ready to understand before. Some connections don't end because they fail. They end because they were never meant to be spoken aloud, only experienced briefly and remembered forever in silence.